The fog had rolled in like a soft gray blanket, swallowing the horizon where the sea should have ended. I remember standing on the deck of that old pier, the wood creaking beneath my boots, each step echoing faintly into the mist. The faint hum of the ocean carried secrets I couldn't quite understand, and the lights of distant ships blinked like tired eyes, barely piercing the haze. Everything was still, except for the low, constant creaking somewhere out on the water. I could feel the chill in my bones, not from the wind, but from something waiting, something patient. And then, through the thick gray veil, I saw a shape drifting silently toward the harbor. Its lights were dim, flickering in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. My stomach sank, and my heart whispered that this was no ordinary ship. Something about it made the air heavy, almost alive. I tried to turn away, to tell myself it was just an illusion, but my eyes betrayed me. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving against the light, slowly, almost watching me in return. The fog rolled over the water, like a blanket too heavy to lift. The sky was a pale gray, and the horizon had already vanished. I could barely see the edges of my own boat. The oars rested against the hull, wet and cold. A damp smell clung to my jacket, like the sea itself was breathing against me. Every splash of water sounded too loud, too deliberate. Then a voice, soft, almost too soft to hear, a whisper curling through the mist. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the tone, it was deliberate, slow, breathing in time with me. I squinted through the fog. Shadows move at the edge of the deck, pale and liminal. Slow steps, or something pretending to be slow steps. I tried to call out, but my voice was swallowed by the gray. Only the hum beneath the boat answered me. Something alive, moving under the water just below the planks. The whispers grew closer, curling around me. I shivered, not from cold, though the fog seeped through my clothes, but from knowing the voices knew me. Axa, Axa, Axa. Each repetition made my chest tighten. I pressed my palms to the deck, slick with condensation. My fingers trembled against the wood, feeling it pulse beneath me. The shadows edged nearer. I could see vague shapes now, figures leaning over the railing, as if watching from another time, their movements deliberate, unhurried. I told myself it was a trick of the light. The fog can do that, it said in my head. But it wasn't the fog. The hum under the boat, it wasn't constant. It thrummed in patterns, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. I felt it under my feet, in my chest, alive, watching, waiting. I dared to glance around the empty deck. Nothing but fog, and those shadows, edges of a world I wasn't meant to see. I could hear the whispers in my ears now, inside my skull. They weren't just calling me. They were echoing my own thoughts. A mirror of my fear, soft and unyielding. The fog thickened, swallowing everything. I could barely see the oars. Couldn't see the bow. Couldn't see myself. One of the shadows leaned closer, not threatening but impossibly still. Its form blurred, like smoke over water. The whispers didn't stop. They repeated my name over and over, a lullaby I never wanted. I tried to close my eyes. Even that didn't help. The hum under the boat grew louder, insistent. I felt it in my teeth, in my lungs. I was floating, but the water felt alive, heavy, pressing upward. And the shadows, patient, deliberate, mirrored my movements. I couldn't move, couldn't turn, couldn't breathe without the whispers tugging at my ribs. Time stretched, each second drawn into the next by the soft, oppressive fog. I imagined the water opening beneath me, swallowing the boat whole. But I didn't fall. I only drifted. Then silence. For a moment, nothing but fog and the pale light on the waves. I exhaled slowly, hoping it was over. And yet, I knew the voices were still there, just beyond sight, breathing in the gray, waiting in the hum beneath the hull. I gripped the edge of the boat, wet and cold. The fog pressed against me, thick and living. I stayed there, alone, with the whispers curling around my name, and the shadows at the edge of the deck. They never left. The wind was thin and sharp that night. It carried the scent of salt and something older, something burned. The rocks below the cliff were slick with moisture, reflecting the pale moonlight. I approached the lighthouse. Its white paint was chipped, streaked with rust. The glass at the top trembled with each flicker of the light. It wasn't a steady beam. It blinked once, twice, then disappeared for too long. I imagined a hand reaching through the darkness, cutting the air. Each step I took echoed. The rocks seemed to carry my footfalls across the empty shore. I stopped. A soft hum lingered in the air, like distant breathing. Inside the tower, shadows moved. Not just shadows, shapes shifting, slow. I couldn't tell if they were human or something pretending. The window fogged with my breath. I leaned closer. Something moved behind the glass. A figure, pale, not quite whole. Then I saw it, a reflection, but it wasn't mine. The face staring back was too still, too calm, and not mine. A sudden gust rattled the tower's old metal. I stumbled back, heart slow and hammering. The light blinked again, then vanished. Silence swallowed the rocks and the wind. I heard soft footsteps, not mine. They traced the rim of the cliff, circling me, but I couldn't see. Only the hum persisted, low and steady, like a warning. I touched the glass. It was cold, impossibly so, deeper than night. The figure leaned closer, meeting my eyes through the pane. I felt it more than saw it. Its presence crawling along my skin, inside my chest. The lighthouse flickered again. A flash of movement inside the tower. I thought I saw more than one figure. They didn't move like humans. They moved in broken lines, jerky, shifting, like they didn't belong to the world outside. I wanted to run, but my feet stayed rooted to the rocks. The wind carried a whisper I couldn't catch. It smelled faintly of smoke, of wet wool, of something I'd lost long ago. Another flash of light revealed them, clearer this time. They were watching me, but not really. Their heads tilted in impossible ways. Eyes that didn't blink. And still, the reflection on the glass. My reflection smiled softly. I stepped back, slipping on whetstone. My breath came in short, tight bursts. The light flickered once more. Then nothing. Only the fog remained, curling around the lighthouse like a slow tide. I couldn't hear the sea anymore. Only the soft, uneven hum, and the echo of steps that weren't mine. I don't know how long I stood there. Time folded, quiet against the wind. When I finally forced myself to leave, the lighthouse didn't follow me. But in the corner of my vision, the flicker returned. And I knew it would wait, always. The tide was low. A pale, restless light draped over sand. Moonlight fractured across scattered driftwood, turning every shape into a shadow I couldn't trust. Some of the pieces bobbed in rhythm with the waves. Others floated against it. I noticed symbols carved into them, small and crooked, glowing faintly, like they remembered something I had forgotten. I knelt, letting the water curl around my fingers. The driftwood whispered with each push of tide. I thought I saw a face form in the reflection, a slip of a human shape beneath the surface. But when I blinked, it was gone. I tried to follow them. Step by slow step, the sand sucked at my boots, dragging me into silence. Every wave hissed and retracted, leaving pieces of seaweed tangled in driftwood like letters on a pale page. They floated further out, fainter now, the symbols pulsing under moon. I wanted to reach them. A tug, soft and deliberate, pulled at my chest, but it wasn't the water. The shapes in the water shifted. A hand here, a shoulder there, almost human. Almost. When I stared too long, the movement stilled, like I had disturbed a memory I wasn't meant to see. Salt air filled my mouth. I could taste something metallic, like the tide had swallowed rust. The driftwood paused, as if considering me. Then it moved again, sliding further away, teasing the line between curiosity and warning. I reached a small inlet. The sand was cold beneath my knees. Something followed. I didn't hear it. No footfall, no splash, just a tightening of the air behind me. I turned, half expecting to see another figure. Nothing. But the rhythm of my heartbeat was louder than the waves. Each breath drew in a deeper, sharper chill. The moonlight reflected in wet sand like an open eye, pale and unwavering. I want to call out. The words hovered in my throat and broke into silence. The symbols glowed one last time, flickering like hesitation, before sinking beneath the tide. I stood there, watching, The sea carried secrets I could not hold. And behind me, something lingered, quiet as shadow, patient as the driftwood itself. I walked back toward the shore. The sand had hardened, and my footprints left a thin line of darkness. Every driftwood piece lay still, pale under the moon, as if waiting for me to forget. But I could feel it, the unseen presence pressing in. I did not look over my shoulder. I did not need to. The tide whispered my name in the spaces between silence and shadow. I walked faster, and still the quiet followed. When I finally reached the beach road, the moon slipped behind a cloud, and the symbols, the driftwood, the shapes in the water, all vanished. I was alone, but not alone, and the memory of something watching me would linger, long after the tide had forgotten. The pier smelled of wet wood and salt, heavy in the quiet evening. Fog curled over the water, pale and slow. I could hear the lapping of the tide against the pylons, soft, patient. A shape drifted at the edge of my vision, a ship unlike any I had seen. Its name was nowhere in the registry. Engines silent, lights dim, like tired eyes staring into the fog. I hesitated. The air felt colder near it. Salt clung to my skin, briny and sharp. I swallowed hard. I found a small rowboat, creaking as I pushed it into the dark water. Oars splashed, heavy and deliberate. The fog seemed to stretch, try and pull me under. Every stroke echoed, as if the water itself were listening. The ship grew closer, looming larger with each pull. I traced its outline through the mist. Decks empty, no sign of life, though it groaned faintly under some invisible weight. I reached the side, hand brushing the railing. It was cold, too cold. I felt it vibrate slightly beneath my fingers. Almost alive, a door shifted somewhere on the deck above. Slow, careful, inviting. I froze. The fog pressed around me, damp and thick. I could smell the oil of old engines, faint and sour. Soft footsteps, mine or not, tapped against the wooden planks. I climbed aboard. Air smelled of wet rope and metal. Empty hallways stretched into darkness. My heartbeat drummed, loud in the silence. I could almost hear the ship breathing, slow and hollow. The door moved again, opening wider. A warm light, dim, spilled into the corridor. I stepped forward, each footstep sounding too loud, too certain. Wood shifted beneath me, groaning like a warning. The silence behind me was deep, full of something unseen. I paused, listening. Nothing but the hum of the ship, steady and patient. Shadows pooled in corners, still but not empty. A faint smell of smoke lingered, sweet and choking. I touched the railing, rough against my palm, and felt the vibrations hum into my bones. It was waiting, and I knew it. I moved through the cabin, noticing small things out of place. Chairs tilted just slightly. A rope coiled as though someone had recently used it. The hum deepened, almost a whisper beneath the dim light. The further I went, the colder it became. My breath fogged in front of me. The ship seemed to shift subtly, tilting in ways water alone couldn't explain. Each step echoed, yet nothing followed. Then the door closed behind me. Softly, just the slightest click. I turned, heart hammering. No one, only the dim glow ahead. I wanted to leave. Every fiber of me screamed. But the light, it drew me, slow and insistent. Warm, familiar, wrong. I stepped closer. The air smelled of old paper and salt. The boards beneath my shoes felt alive, humming faintly under my weight. The door ahead opened wider on its own, a quiet invitation. I stood there, breath shallow. The fog outside pressed against the hull. The tide whispered secrets I could almost understand. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. And then I realized the ship had been waiting, not for anyone in particular, not for me exactly, but for someone, for something. The corridor stretched ahead, dim and endless. I stepped forward. A shadow flickered at the edge of the light, and the ship shifted beneath me as if sighing, patient, eternal. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. It was there, always waiting. The fog lay heavy over the pier. Damp would glisten under the pale morning light. Salt stung my skin, carried on the wind that whispered through the ropes. I found it there, half buried in the sand. A bottle, green and jagged at the rim, corked tight. It seemed to pulse with quiet insistence. Inside, letters, folded too many times, soaked through with salt water. The ink ran in thin rivulets, curling like smoke over paper. I blinked, and the words shifted, trembled just slightly, as if uncertain themselves. Each one was addressed to no one. No signature, no name, only the story. A sailor lost at sea, one who never returned, one whose regrets were etched in every curve of the smudged letters. The first letter smelled of brine and old wood. It spoke of a storm I had never heard of, waves that tore at the hull like fingers. I could feel the cold spray, sharp against my cheek. The hum of the ocean seemed to seep through the paper, curling in my chest. Another letter trembled in my hands. The ink twisted as I read, words I thought I recognized slipping into something else. A confession a brother left behind, a love lost to the deep, a promise broken under a gray, endless sky. I pressed the letters closer, afraid to let them fall. They smelled of wet linen and decay. The fog around me thickened, swallowing the pier in a hush so complete it made my ears ache. I blinked again, and the sentences rearranged themselves. One moment it read, I can hear the waves calling. The next, I'm already gone. I could feel the tide pulling at my thoughts, dragging them beneath. The letters trembled in my palms, small tremors like heartbeat beneath my fingers. I sensed something, shifting just beyond the fog. Soft footsteps that weren't mine, rustling that could have been the wind, or something patient. I remembered a story in one of the letters. A sailor who waited for the horizon to return him. Day after day, he never did. His regrets were damp and cold, inked into paper that would never dry. The bottle rattled slightly, nudged by a wave curling onto the sand. I imagined hands that had written these words, pale and trembling, hands that had released themselves to the ocean, hoping for absolution in salt water. A scent of brine filled my lungs more fully. The pier groaned under the weight of time and tide. I wanted to put the letters back, to forget, but I couldn't. Each letter spoke to a corner of me I had ignored. Regret, small and gnawing, loss I had never fully named. The letters weren't just stories. They were warnings. I tried to fold them back into the bottle. The cork resisted. It felt as if the sea itself was holding on to the secrets. For a long while I just sat there. The fog moved like slow smoke. The letters lay on my lap, whispering, shifting, alive with absence. The sun edged higher, pale and hesitant. The ocean hummed low, steady. I felt the pull of it, the quiet insistence to remember. I left the bottle on the pier. I could not carry their regrets with me. But as I walked back through the mist, I felt them trailing behind, soft as footsteps on wet wood. And I knew, even alone, even under pale light, the sea never forgets. It remembers every sailor, every letter, every regret. The cabin smelled of wet wood and cold stone. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, thick and unyielding. I stepped inside, boots whispering over floorboards, each one groaning beneath my weight. The air was heavy, the kind that makes your chest ache before you even realize it. A small fire in the corner shivered, casting pale light across the walls. That's when I noticed him. A portrait, a captain, eyes sharp, staring from a gilded frame. At first, I thought it was the angle of the light. But then, he moved, not with the brush, not with magic, but his eyes, dark, endless, followed me across the room, around the corners, into the shadows where floorboards whisper my name. I told myself it was foolishness, cabin fatigue. Storms make the mind see things. The walls hummed, a low, steady vibration like distant thunder. Then words, soft, layered into the hum. Why are you here? I froze. The sound didn't belong outside. It was woven into the wood, into the thick, damp air. I swallowed, taste metallic, cold on my tongue. The portrait shifted again. His eyes darker now, almost wet. They weren't just watching. They were waiting. I moved toward the table, fingers brushing a candle. It flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. In the corner, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping behind the doorframe. No breeze stirred. No one was there. The storm beyond the cabin grew louder, or perhaps I just noticed it. Lightning flashed, sharp and brief. The captain's eyes glimmered in response. I stepped back, heart thudding and soft, uneven beats. I tried to leave. The door handle was cold, slick under my fingers. It resisted, a subtle push against my will, like something inside didn't want to go. I could feel the gaze again, slice into the thin veil of air, following each motion. The walls whispered again, softer this time, almost intimate. "Stay." I shivered, my breath visible in the pale firelight. I touched the portrait, fingertips grazing the painted eyes. Cold, wet with something not quite paint. I stepped away. A chair creaked behind me. I hadn't moved it. The wind outside howled, rattling the windows, but the voice inside, the captain's voice, lingered. Alone. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. I was alone. Cabin, storm, nothing more. But then the eyes changed again. Not just darker. Hungry. Alive. I knelt by the fire, trying to warm hands that shook too much. The shadows twisted, forming shapes too quick to follow. Something brushed my shoulder. Cold, deliberate. I turned. Nothing. Just a rocking chair. Swaying empty. The storm outside reached a crescendo. Thunder rolled across the mountains, shaking the cabin. And through it, I heard a laugh. Soft, dry, hollow. It wasn't human. I backed toward the far wall, feeling for something to steady myself. My palm brushed the shelf. Dust rising, particles floating in the candlelight. Then I noticed it. The eyes, no longer just following. They were closer, leaning from the frame, watching from angles no I could reach. I whispered, though I didn't know if anyone could hear. I need to go. The hum of the walls grew louder, more insistent. A cold draft swept through, carrying the scent of sea and iron. The captain's voice sharper now. "You cannot leave." I stumbled toward the door. It opened easily this time. The storm outside seemed welcoming, but I couldn't step through. One last glance at the portrait. The eyes, black as oil, endless, pinned me to the floor. I felt the room breathe around me. A presence, patient and unyielding. I sank to the floorboards, the storm howling outside, my own breath loud in my ears. The eyes didn't blink. They simply waited. I closed my eyes, hoping to wake, hoping the captain was nothing but paint and shadow. But even in darkness, I could feel him, watching, always. And then the whisper returned, barely audible, threading to the timber. Alone forever. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just listened, heart small and trembling, as the fog pressed closer, and the storm echoed a voice older than the mountains themselves. The attic smelled of dust and old wood. Pale light from the small window slanted across the floorboards. I was alone. I found the radio wedged between boxes. Its surface was cold, metal biting my fingertips. I didn't remember it being here. A crackle stirred the silence. Static, high and thin, filling the space between the rafters. I leaned closer. Then a voice whispered. Not my voice. Not anyone I knew. Coordinates. Numbers that shouldn't exist in my mind. Each syllable paused, trembling, like it was waiting for me to respond. I tried. My lips barely moved. Nothing. The voice stopped. Only the static hummed. Soft, persistent, like a spider crawling along the edge of my skin. I shivered. Another voice. Lower this time. Sad, distant, like it had been waiting for years to speak. It mirrored thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. I reached out, hand hovering above the dial. The moment I touched it, silence. A shadow shifted in the corner of the attic. I froze. The static returned. It was closer now, wrapping around my chest. I felt the vibration in my bones, not just my ears. Not yet, it whispered. I jerked back. No one was there. I wanted to leave. Feet heavy, heart heavier. But the numbers kept looping in my mind. The coordinates, impossible locations, places I didn't know existed. I pressed my ear to the radio. It whispered again. A conversation I couldn't place, between voices I'd never meet. Every pause left a hollow in the air, a space for dread to grow. The attic window rattled. a cold draft brushing against my neck. I thought I saw a hand, pale, sliding along the glass. Then it was gone. I whispered into the radio. No reply. The voices had stopped. Only the faint hum of static lingered, soft and suffocating. I sank to the floor. Hands pressed to my ears. Each number repeated, echoing in my skull. The voices, they weren't gone. Just waiting. I tried to stand. The floorboards groaned under me. A shadow stretched across the ceiling, long and thin. It moved closer with each pulse of the static. Air tasted like iron. Cold pressed into my chest. I wanted to run, but something in the radio held me, tethered by invisible threads. A soft footstep behind me. I didn't turn. The static faded, leaving a hollow silence. Then a whisper so close I could feel it against my ear. You'll come. The attic felt smaller, the dust heavier. Time slowed, every breath dragging. I could still hear the coordinates, repeating. Soft, patient, waiting. I sat there, pressed against the wall, listening, hoping it would end, hoping it wouldn't. The radio fell silent. I didn't move. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window again. And somewhere in that quiet, I swore I heard a soft knock. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The ocean was restless. Not the ordinary swell. The gentle rise and fall I had come to know. It moved like it was morning, heavy and low, dragging against the hull with a soft, constant pressure. I sat on the deck, hands resting on cold wood. Salt stung my lips. A chill pressed through the mist. Beneath me, shapes drifted. I caught glimpses, pale, unmoving forms that hovered just below the surface. I thought at first they were debris, but they moved too slowly, deliberately, as if they were waiting. The sky grew dark. Not clouds. Something denser. Something that made the horizon disappear into a hollow gray. It wasn't a storm. It was a presence. The waves whispered against the sides of my boat. Sometimes a hush, almost a sigh, brushing my ankles as they splashed. I pressed my fingers into the railing. It shivered under my touch, like it was trembling. I tried to look away, but the shapes followed me. I felt their weight beneath the water, a pull I could not name. The air thickened, salty and damp, clinging to my skin. Every breath tasted like rust. A shadow shifted across the water, long, thin, indistinct. It stretched farther than the light could reach. I felt my heart slow, and my ears began to hum, low and insistent. I imagined the ocean crying, its grief rising in waves, carrying faces I could not recognize. The hum became a whisper. I could almost make out words. Almost. But then the wind swallowed them, leaving only silence. The pale forms drifted closer. I could see them clearer now, limbs tangled in still water, hair floating like seaweed, eyes closed, mouth slack. They did not look alive, and yet I could feel them watching. The boat creaked under my weight. Soft footsteps of water, lapping, sounded like someone pacing just out of reach. I leaned over the edge. The surface rippled and swirled. I thought I saw a face, just for a second, staring back from beneath the water. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. I wanted to call out, to break the hush with a sound that would bring me back to myself. But the air stuck in my throat, thick as wet wool. All I could do was watch. The sky pressed closer. Not a change in light, but in heaviness. It settled over me like damp cloth, and I could feel the space around the boat shrinking. The waves seemed to push in, nudging me toward the center of something I could not name. I traced my fingers along the edge of the deck. The wood was smooth, slick with salt. Every touch felt electric. Every ripple through the boat echoed through my bones. Beneath me, shapes shifted again. They moved slower than life, slower than death. I didn't know which one they were, and I didn't want to know. A hush settled over the water. The hum faded. The cold pressed deeper into my chest. And for a moment, the world was only gray, only still. I could hear my own heartbeat, uneven, trembling. Then the first wave struck harder than the rest. It rocked the boat, splashed over the railing, kissed my legs with icy fingers. I thought I saw the forms ripple beneath it. Not away, not fleeing, but shifting closer. The presence in the sky remained, unmoving and silent. And I understood, slowly, that I was not here by accident. The ocean did not mourn me. It mourned through me. I sat alone, salt and cold seeping into my bones, and watched the pale shapes drift in the endless gray. The wind carried no words. The waves offered no comfort, only the slow, steady whisper of water, and the quiet knowledge that I would never leave. Not truly. The horizon faded entirely. Darkness softened into pale light. A breath of wind moved across the deck, carrying with it the faintest rustle of hair against skin. The shapes drifted. The ocean wept, and I waited quietly alongside it. The fog clung to the dock, thick and pale, swallowing the edges of the world. I stepped onto the deck, boots wet from the mist, the wood beneath them cold and slick. The ship's name had faded long ago, etched only in rust along the hull. A slow groan stretched through the air, curling around me, like the ship itself exhaling after a long, dreamless sleep. Every plank I touched shivered under my hand. The doors along the cargo hold shifted. 1, 2, 3. They moved in quiet rhythm, almost deliberate, almost aware. I tried to listen without listening, letting the hollow hum fill the spaces behind my ribs. A rope swayed gently, whispering against the mast. The wind was soft, almost courteous, brushing my neck. Down the corridor, shadows pooled like dark water. The metal rails were slick, cold against my fingertips, and the smell of salt was thick, almost bitter. I thought I heard footsteps, but they followed my own. A crate leaned on its side, corners dented, with splintering in soft, careful lines. I crouched to peer inside. Nothing, only the faintest hum of air escaping some secret place. The floor beneath me shivered, tiny echoes trembling upward. I pressed my palms flat, skin sticky with moisture, and the boards pulsed under my touch, in sync with something slower than a heartbeat. From below, a low groan rose, slow and deliberate, curling up the stairwell like smoke. I froze. My own breathing sounded too loud, too clumsy. A door in my left slid open with a barely audible sigh, then shut without reason. I felt the air change. Heavy, damp, almost expectant. My shadow stretched long across the rusting walls, then twitched as if caught in something unseen. I walked further, the silence thick around me. Each step measured, careful, the creaks beneath my boots keeping time with my pulse. I imagined eyes in the dark, though I could not see, only sense the absence of light. A ladder rose ahead, metal cold and slick. I ran my fingers along it, feeling the vibration of the ship's old bones, soft but insistent, like it wanted me to climb. Above the deck, the fog had grown denser, blurring the edges of the railing, turning the world into muted gray. I leaned over, nose stinging with salt, and thought I saw shapes moving beneath the water, then dismissed them as shadows of the mist. A faint humming lingered, almost like the ship breathing through a long-lost throat. I paused, hand on the railing, listening. A door behind me opened slowly. I didn't look. I didn't move. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of something metallic, like rust and forgotten blood, and the boards groaned beneath their own weight. Every sound stretched long, leaving silence behind it. I realized I had stopped walking. The ship had stopped me. Somehow, my own heartbeat felt small, fragile, almost like an intruder in its quiet halls. I turned slowly, not expecting anything, but expecting everything. The fog wrapped around me like a pale shroud. I stepped back toward the railing. The hum lingered. The door sighed once more. And then nothing. Just a ship, alone and me, breathing too loud among the slow creaks of its decks of silence. The deck, boards groaned under my weight. Salt hung heavy in the air, clinging to my hair, my skin. The sky above was a pale wash of gray, and the wind whispered through the rigging. I found the hatch almost by accident. Its edges were slick with brine, rust eating at the hinges. A faint smell rose from beneath. Old wood dampness, something rotting. The cabin below was smaller than I imagined. Shadows pulled in the corners, thick and still. Light from the deck filtered through the cracks, pale and trembling. Objects shifted when I blinked. A cup on the table slid an inch, then a foot. Books leaned differently each time I glanced their way. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, but the air was still. I touched the wall. It shivered under my fingers, or maybe my mind did. The smell of salt was stronger here, sharp in my nostrils, coating my tongue. There was a journal on the floor. Its cover cracked, pages curled with age. I opened it slowly. The words were familiar, stories I remembered, places I had been, people I had loved, or thought I had. I read a line and paused, breath catching the hollow of my chest. A memory I could not place, yet I knew it. The cabin seemed to lean in closer. Every movement echoed too loudly. A chair rocked gently, though nothing had touched it. The journal trembled in my lap, though my hands were steady. Outside, the wind rasped against the deck. Inside, the silence was alive. A whisper slipped from the pages, brushing my ear. I jerked, heart hammering. Nothing, only the soft rustle of paper. I turned a page. The handwriting shifted. A name appeared I had never spoken aloud. A date, impossibly far in the past, yet felt like yesterday. I smelled decay again. It wasn't the wood, not entirely. It was deeper, older, like something breathing just beneath the floorboards. I tried to close the journal. It wouldn't let me. The words seemed to coil around my fingers, pulling me in. A shadow slid across the wall. Slow, deliberate, as though it had been waiting. I froze, tasting salt and fear together, my pulse echoing in my ears. I looked away. The journal's pages fluttered, though no wind stirred. I looked back. Everything was still, or maybe nothing ever was. A faint hum filled the cabin. It was beneath the floor, inside the walls. I pressed my palm against the rough wood, feeling it vibrate, alive, patient. I wanted to leave, but the hatch seemed farther than before, as if the cabin had stretched in my absence. Each step toward it scraped the air with tension, dragging the salt into my lungs. The journal fell shut softly, without my touch. The hum faded. Silence returned, heavy, expectant. I lingered a moment longer, tasting the salt, inhaling decay, listening for the faintest shift, and then I climbed back onto the deck. The sky was gray. The wind carried no whispers. But beneath my feet, the cabin waited, patient, silent, full of memories that were mine, and yet not mine at all. The night was thick with mist, the kind that makes the air taste like damp wool. I walked along the edge of the water, boots sinking slightly into soft sand. The moon was pale, hidden behind low clouds, and the waves whispered low, wet secrets. Every step I took echoed faintly, swallowed by the fog. Then I saw it, a light, faint, floating on the horizon, soft, uncertain, unmoving, yet somehow following. I froze. There was no boat, no reflection in the black water, just a glow, hovering like it waited for me. The mist curled around my ankles. It smelled of salt and something older, something buried in the quiet hum of the night. I took a step closer. The light pulsed gently, not like fire, more like it breathed. It pulled at me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My own heartbeat felt loud, thudding in the hush. The fog swirled, wrapping the world in silver shadows. I could hear water lapping, soft and irregular, and the rustling of reeds somewhere just beyond my sight. The light moved, not fast, not sudden. It drifted, almost lazily, across the water's edge, and with it a whisper, too faint to understand. I held my breath. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but curiosity draped over me like a heavy coat. It felt alive, not human, not animal, something else, soft, beckoning, patient. It swayed, as if testing me, gauging if I would follow. My hands tingled from the cold, wet air. My jacket clung to my skin. The sand shifted beneath me, damp and cold. The horizon blurred. The light grew brighter, not in warmth, but in focus. It hovered just above the water, casting long, pale reflections that didn't match its shape. I took another step, then another. The world around me shrank to fog and glow. My breath puffed small, quick clouds that disappeared instantly. I could feel it watching, not in my eyes, not with my ears, deep in my chest, where the blood thrummed hard and fast. It moved closer, almost teasingly, and I felt the pull stronger, like a tide under my feet, like a story my mind had almost forgotten, calling me back. I whisper my own name. It didn't answer, but the light, it pulsed again, a gentle rhythm, echoing my pulse, matching it, dragging it outward. I wanted to look away, but my eyes followed, and I felt something brush against my shoulder, just a whisper of movement, a shadow that wasn't quite mine. The mist thickened, the glow softened, then brightened again, always just ahead, never letting me catch it fully. I sank to my knees, sand cold and damp through my clothes. The water kissed the edges of the shore, and the light lingered, hovering like it knew I wouldn't leave. Then it shifted again, a slow, floating drift, and in that motion, I realized it wasn't just following. It was waiting for something. The reeds rustled, faint and hollow. I shivered. The wind carried no warmth, only whispers I couldn't name. My hands trembled. My lips felt dry. The light tilted toward me, a pale, quiet invitation. And for a moment, I imagined stepping forward, letting the fog swallow me entirely. But I stayed, frozen, watching. The glow lingered, floating, breathing, waiting. And then, almost imperceptibly, it drifted back toward the horizon, slower, gentle, as if letting me choose. I stayed on the sand, alone with the waves and the fog. The light vanished, leaving only its memory etched in pale mist and silence. I rose slowly. The air tasted of salt and something faintly metallic. My feet pressed into damp sand, and somewhere, far across the water, I thought I saw it pulse one last time. Then nothing, only the hum of the night, and the soft rustling of fog around me. The water stretches, gray, heavy, unbroken. No land, no sun, only fog, thick and damp, curling around me. It presses against my skin, clings to my clothes, touches my face like cold fingers. I drift endlessly. The silence, it is almost alive. It rests on my ears, settles in my chest. A weight I cannot lift. I hear my breath, shallow, shaky, then nothing. A ripple moves beneath me, not from wind, not from anything I can see. I hold still, the water swallows sound, but the ripple lingers soft, deliberate. I reach out, fingers skim the surface. It's colder than I expected. It tastes of iron, rust or blood, I cannot tell. The fog thickens. It folds around me in layers, gray over gray, smothering. A shadow drifts past, not my own, slipping under the surface. I blink. It is gone, or maybe it never was. Time stretches. Minutes fold into hours. I try to remember how long I've been here. I cannot. I cannot even remember how I arrived. The water moves differently now, shivers in patterns I cannot follow. It hums, a low vibration under my chest. I hear it in my teeth, my bones. I wonder if I am dreaming, if the fog will lift, if the horizon will break. But the horizon, it never breaks. Occasionally, a soft splash echoes. Not from me, not near me. I hold my breath. The sound fades, and I am swallowed again by silence. I try to shout. My voice catches. My throat fills with the taste of salt and something else, something old, metallic. I stop. The fog seems to listen. I touch the water again. The ripple returns. Closer this time. I feel a shift beneath my hands. Cold, wet, moving, not water. I do not move. I cannot. My body is heavy, slow. The fog is thicker than before, almost solid. I push at it. It resists. The gray folds in on itself. A figure? A shape in the mist? I can't tell. I only feel its presence, like a breath on the back of my neck. The fog presses again. And then nothing. The water is still. My ears ache from the quiet. My chest rises, falls. I drift, and I know I will drift forever. The horizon does not return. The sun never breaks the gray. The fog never lifts. Only the hum of the water. Only my shallow, panic breaths. I close my eyes. The mist clings to my lashes, cold and soft. It smells like the bottom of the sea. And I am alone, endlessly alone, in a gray world that does not exist, and a silence that waits for me to speak. I do not speak. I cannot. I just drift. The fog hugged the deck like a damp, waiting hand. It was late, the kind of late where the world shrinks to the sway of wood and the whisper of water. I leaned against the railing, my hands cold, the salt clinging to my skin. Then they began. Bells. Dull at first. Hesitant. No wind. No clouded sky. Nothing moved. Just a clang. It rolled across the water and into my chest, each strike sending a tremor through my ribs. I could feel it in my teeth, in the hollow of my throat. Shadows gathered, slow at first, like ink spilling from the corners of the ship. They rose with each toll, flickering against a mast. I blinked. They lingered. The deck creaked beneath me, a soft, uneven rhythm. Footsteps that weren't mine, or maybe mine, but wrong. Another bell, louder this time. It struck inside my head before it hit the air. My stomach quivered. The fog shivered in response. I wanted to turn away, to run below, where the walls might keep the bells at bay. But the sound followed, slithered through the cabin doors. It wrapped around my ankles like cold rope. I pressed my hands to the railing. The metal was damp, almost alive under my fingers. The bells struck again. The shadows rose higher, leaning toward me. They whispered with the curves of the waves. I tried to focus on the water. The pale gleam of the moon blurred behind fog, but the reflection trembled, broken into jagged teeth. Each bell split further. Every chime pulled at something inside me. The fog shifted. A hand, perhaps, brushing against my shoulder. Or nothing at all. My skin prickled. My breath was loud enough to drown out the silence. A bell closer now. Not above, not behind. Beside me, it sang through the wood beneath my feet, vibrating through my chest, through my heart. The shadows didn't retreat. They climbed the masts, stretching over the deck, curling around the rigging. I could feel their weight, a press on my spine, a soft, patient push. Another strike. The sound lingered, like a memory I couldn't place. I knew it belonged to someone else, someone who had waited here long before me, who had felt it too. I wanted to scream. The sound stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched. The fog, the shadows, the pale light trembling on the water, and the bells kept ringing. Softly now, fading. Or maybe I had stopped hearing. A hush fell over the deck. The shadows slumped, like tired sailors leaning against invisible walls. The fog retreated slightly, and the water licked the hull in silence. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The bells had left, but the weight of them lingered, a pulse in my chest, a whisper at the edge of my hearing, a reminder that some things wait patiently for the next toll. I stayed until the fog swallowed the ship completely, and even then in the dark I could still feel the hum, a memory of sound, a shadow that didn't leave. The harbor was empty. Mist rolled off the water, soft and thick, curling around the old wooden piers. I could barely see my own hands in front of me. The fog smelled of salt and rust. A rope creaked somewhere behind me, moving with no wind. Footsteps echoed faintly, not mine. I saw them first as shadows. Figures hunched over, leaning against the railings. They didn't move, yet I felt them watching. Their faces were pale, almost luminous in the haze. I took a step closer. One of them raised a hand slowly, as if to warn me. The fog swallowed the sound of the waves. I heard a whisper, almost beneath the hum of the harbor. A sigh, a groan, a breath not mine. I reached for the nearest figure. Their eyes were wide, frozen in regret. And then, just as quickly, they were gone. The mist pressed against my skin, cold and wet. I stumbled forward. Every shadow seemed alive, leaning toward me, stretching, dissolving. Another appeared at the end of the pier. Their uniform was damp and torn. The same frozen expression, mouth open like they were about to speak, warning me. I called out, but my voice vanished into the fog. Silence returned, heavier this time. The boards under my feet groaned, alone, unaccompanied. The smell of old seawater was stronger now, sharp with iron. I could taste it in my throat. A whisper floated past, carrying a name I didn't recognize. I saw movement on the water, but it was wrong. Not waves, not reflections. Figures drifting, floating just above the surface. Each one turned toward me. I tried to move backward. The mist thickened, wrapping around my legs, cold fingers of fog holding me. I could hear soft footsteps behind me, circling, fading, returning. The last figure I saw crouched near the edge, eyes wide, pleading, regret carved into their features, frozen forever. I blinked, and they were gone. The fog was empty again, but heavier now, like it had swallowed a part of me. I walked slowly, listening. The harbor was still. Only the drip of water from the pier kept time. Something touched my shoulder. A shadow? A memory? I didn't turn. The mist moved as if alive, curling around my chest, soft and insistent. I could feel the warning behind it, lingering. I left the pier before sunrise. The fog stayed. It followed me, soft, quiet, patient. Even now I feel it, watching, waiting. And I know the next time I return it will be ready. The night was damp. A pale mist hung low over the water, curling around the edges of the dock. The boards beneath my feet were slick, groaning under each careful step. I hadn't meant to come here. The ship was moored just beyond reach, its hull half swallowed by shadows. Its name, faded and flaking, whispered nothing. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the bow, alone. It was still, a silhouette against the faint shimmer of moonlight, the kind of stillness that presses into your chest, that makes your lungs heavy. I held my breath. It turned, slowly, and in that turn there was nothing, no face, no eyes, just a hollow darkness where the features should have been. My stomach clenched. A cold fog slipped over my shoulders, crawling down my arms. I could hear the water brushing against the hull, steady and unnerving, like a pulse. I want to call out. My voice caught in my throat. The air felt thick, sticky, clinging. The figure lifted one hand. Just a flick, barely noticeable. And I felt it, somehow, the weight of being watched, stretching into the marrow of my bones. I stepped closer. The boards trembled beneath me. Each breath I took seemed too loud. The wind picked up, rustling through the rigging, whispering over the deck. I imagined it carrying voices, soft, indistinct. Or maybe I was imagining. My throat fills with the taste of salt and something else, something old, metallic. I stop. The fog seems to listen. I touch the water again. The ripple returns. Closer this time. I feel a shift beneath my hands. Cold, wet, moving. Not water. I do not move. I cannot. My body is heavy, slow. The fog is thicker than before, almost solid. I push at it. It resists. The gray folds in on itself. A figure? A shape in the mist? I can't tell. I only feel its presence, like a breath on the back of my neck. The fog presses again. And then nothing. The water is still. My ears ache from the quiet. My chest rises. Falls. I drift, and I know I will drift forever. The horizon does not return. The sun never breaks the gray. The fog never lifts. Only the hum of the water. Only my shallow, panicked breaths. I close my eyes. The mist clings to my lashes, cold and soft. It smells like the bottom of the sea. And I am alone, endlessly alone, in a gray world that does not exist, and a silence that waits for me to speak. I do not speak. I cannot. I just drift. The fog hugged the deck like a damp, waiting hand. It was late, the kind of late where the world shrinks to the sway of wood and the whisper of water. I leaned against the railing, my hands cold, the salt clinging to my skin. Then they began. Bells. Dull at first. Hesitant. No wind. No clouded sky. Nothing moved. Just a clang. It rolled across the water and into my chest, each strike sending a tremor through my ribs. I could feel it in my teeth, in the hollow of my throat. Shadows gathered, slow at first, like ink spilling from the corners of the ship. They rose with each toll, flickering against a mast. I blinked. They lingered. The deck creaked beneath me. A soft, uneven rhythm. Footsteps that weren't mine, or maybe mine, but wrong. Another bell. Louder this time. It struck inside my head before it hit the air. My stomach quivered. The fog shivered in response. I wanted to turn away, to run below, where the walls might keep the bells at bay. But the sound followed, slithered through the cabin doors. It wrapped around my ankles like cold rope. I pressed my hands to the railing. The metal was damp, almost alive under my fingers. The bells struck again. The shadows rose higher, leaning toward me. They whispered with the curves of the waves. I tried to focus on the water. The pale gleam of the moon blurred behind fog, but the reflection trembled, broken into jagged teeth. Each bell split further. Every chime pulled at something inside me. The fog shifted. A hand, perhaps brushing against my shoulder, or nothing at all. My skin prickled. My breath was loud enough to drown out the silence. A bell closer now. Not above, not behind. Beside me, it sang through the wood beneath my feet, vibrating through my chest, through my heart. The shadows didn't retreat. They climbed the masts, stretching over the deck, curling around the rigging. I could feel their weight, a press on my spine, a soft, patient push. Another strike. The sound lingered, like a memory I couldn't place. I knew it belonged to someone else, someone who had waited here long before me, who had felt it too. I wanted to scream. The sound stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched. The fog, the shadows, the pale light trembling on the water, and the bells kept ringing, softly now, fading, or maybe I had stopped hearing. A hush fell over the deck. The shadows slumped, like tired sailors leaning against invisible walls. The fog retreated slightly, and the water licked the hull in silence. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The bells had left, but the weight of them lingered, a pulse in my chest, a whisper at the edge of my hearing, a reminder that some things wait patiently for the next toll. I stayed until the fog swallowed the ship completely, and even then in the dark I could still feel the hum, a memory of sound, a shadow that didn't leave. The harbor was empty. Mist rolled off the water, soft and thick, curling around the old wooden piers. I could barely see my own hands in front of me. The fog smelled of salt and rust. A rope creaked somewhere behind me, moving with no wind. Footsteps echoed faintly, not mine. I saw them first as shadows. Figures hunched over, leaning against the railings. They didn't move, yet I felt them watching. Their faces were pale, almost luminous in the haze. I took a step closer. One of them raised a hand slowly, as if to warn me. The fog swallowed the sound of the waves. I heard a whisper, almost beneath the hum of the harbor, a sigh, a groan, a breath not mine. I reached for the nearest figure. Their eyes were wide, frozen in regret. And then, just as quickly, they were gone. The mist pressed against my skin, cold and wet. I stumbled forward. Every shadow seemed alive, leaning toward me, stretching, dissolving. Another appeared at the end of the pier. Their uniform was damp and torn. The same frozen expression, mouth open like they were about to speak, warning me. I called out, but my voice vanished into the fog. Silence returned, heavier this time. The boards under my feet groaned, alone, unaccompanied. The smell of old seawater was stronger now, sharp with iron. I could taste it in my throat. A whisper floated past, carrying a name I didn't recognize. I saw movement on the water, but it was wrong. Not waves, not reflections. Figures drifting, floating just above the surface. Each one turned toward me. I tried to move backward. The mist thickened, wrapping around my legs, cold fingers of fog holding me. I could hear soft footsteps behind me, circling, fading, returning. The last figure I saw crouched near the edge, eyes wide, pleading, regret carved into their features, frozen forever. I blinked, and they were gone. The fog was empty again, but heavier now, like it had swallowed a part of me. I walked slowly, listening. The harbor was still. Only the drip of water from the pier kept time. Something touched my shoulder. A shadow? A memory? I didn't turn. The mist moved as if alive, curling around my chest, soft and insistent. I could feel the warning behind it, lingering. I left the pier before sunrise. The fog stayed. It followed me, soft, quiet, patient. Even now I feel it, watching, waiting. And I know the next time I return it will be ready. The night was damp. A pale mist hung low over the water, curling around the edges of the dock. The boards beneath my feet were slick, groaning under each careful step. I hadn't meant to come here. The ship was moored just beyond reach, its hull half swallowed by shadows. Its name, faded and flaking, whispered nothing. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the bow, alone. It was still, a silhouette against the faint shimmer of moonlight, the kind of stillness that presses into your chest, that makes your lungs heavy. I held my breath. It turned, slowly, and in that turn there was nothing, no face, no eyes, just a hollow darkness where the features should have been. My stomach clenched. A cold fog slipped over my shoulders, crawling down my arms. I could hear the water brushing against the hull, steady and unnerving, like a pulse. I want to call out. My voice caught in my throat. The air felt thick, sticky, clinging. The figure lifted one hand. Just a flick, barely noticeable. And I felt it, somehow, the weight of being watched, stretching into the marrow of my bones. I stepped closer. The boards trembled beneath me. Each breath I took seemed too loud. The wind picked up, rustling through the rigging, whispering over the deck. I imagined it carrying voices, soft, indistinct. Or maybe I was imagining. The rhythm hypnotic, like waves on a shore that does not exist. I saw the muscles in his arms tighten. The strain of motion, repeated endlessly, but the boat barely moved. It was adrift, a loop, a pattern that made no sense. The moon shifted. A beam fell across the river and painted him in silver. The mouth still moved. Silent. I wanted to scream, but my voice had been stolen, or borrowed by the fog. I stepped back. The mist curled around my ankles. Cold water lapped against the pier, quiet now, as if embarrassed to have made a sound. The man's eyes, still unseen, seemed to reach, not at me, but through me, through everything I thought I knew. Then he slowed. The oars hung in place for a heartbeat. I felt the world pause. A whisper of wind, carrying the smell of wet earth and river rot. And just like that, he was gone. The fog swallowed him first. Then the boat, then the small, urgent hum that had followed him across the water. I was alone. The river returned to stillness, but my chest kept moving too fast, breaking the calm. A soft drip of water from the pier echoed, relentless, and I could swear, though I didn't want to, that the silent mouth had left a trace in the air, a shape, a feeling that would not leave. I stayed until the mist thinned, until the moon hid behind clouds, until my hands were numb, and even then, the backward rhythm haunted my thoughts, like a lullaby sung upside down. The air smelled of salt and old timber. Fog clung to the deck like a thin veil, soft against my skin. I held the compass in my hand. It spun, faster than any wind could turn it. North, south, east, none of it mattered. I lowered it. The needle didn't settle. It trembled like it knew something I didn't. A faint hum rose from the wood beneath my feet. I leaned closer. The hum became a breath, slow and heavy, brushing my ears. Curiosity, quiet but insistent, nudged me forward. The compass in my palm quivered. I followed it. The deck twisted beneath the fog, unfamiliar yet strangely known. I passed doors I didn't remember. Their paint peeled and pale under the dim light. Soft footsteps echoed behind me, though I was alone. The air thickened with the smell of rust and seaweed. I could taste the brine metallic and sharp. Each step made the wood groan beneath me. The compass jerked to the left. I turned. A corridor stretched before me, long and narrow, shadows pooling in the corners. My hand brushed the wall. Rough, damp, almost alive. A whisper curled around the edges of the fog. Not words I recognized, just a pressure, a hint of memory. I slowed, listening. A single door at the end of the hall drew me. I pushed it open. The air inside smelled warmer, older, like hidden things decaying slowly. A cabin. Everything was just as it should have been, yet wrong. A rocking chair swayed in the corner. No wind. I stepped closer. It stilled. The compass spun violently again. I felt its pull in my chest, a tug of something familiar, distant, almost forgotten. Shadows clung to walls, bending and stretching with the candlelight. I ran my fingers over the desk. The wood felt smooth, though years of neglect should have made it splintered. A journal lay open. The pages smelled faintly of smoke and salt. I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. I touched the pages. and the compass trembled in response. A draft whispered to the cabin, brushing my hair, tickling my neck. I shivered. The room held a silence that pressed against my chest. The walls seemed to breathe. A memory flickered, bright and fleeting. I was here before, or had I only dreamed it? The compass spun faster. I closed my eyes. Soft, almost imperceptible footsteps moved across the floor behind me. Not hurried, patient, waiting. I opened my eyes. The cabin was empty. The journal still lay open, but the candle's flame flickered, dancing like a heartbeat. I held the compass closer. Its needle pointed nowhere and everywhere. I felt the pull again, quiet now, insistent. It led me not just through the ship, but through memory, through time I thought I'd lost. I stepped back into the corridor. The fog pressed against my face. The hum returned, low and steady, almost comforting, and somewhere far beneath the deck, I felt it, a pulse, like the ship itself remembered me, like it had been waiting. The compass slowed. Its needle wavered, then stopped. I let it rest against my palm. I didn't move. I only listened. The shadows sighed. The fog shifted. And I understood in the quiet that some things are hidden until you remember them. The fog rolled in slowly. Not the soft, harmless kind. It moved like it had weight. I could feel it pressing against my skin. Cold, damp, clinging. Every inhale tasted like metal and wet earth. The trees around me bent under it. Branches scraped the ground with soft, dragging whispers. I wanted to step back, but the mist seemed to reach for my feet. At first, it was just gray, a shifting gray that swallowed light. But then, shapes. They were vague at first. A bend of shoulders, a flicker of movement, almost human, almost real. I held my breath. The fog seemed to inhale with me. A slow, deliberate exhale brushed across my neck, like lips I couldn't see. One figure became two, or maybe it had multiplied from one. I couldn't tell. They didn't walk. They floated, gliding just above the wet earth. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, a trick of the early morning cold. But the shapes, they turned to me, not with faces, exactly, but with a hollow impression of watching. Every step I made, the mist curled tighter around me. It tasted of iron now, blood or soil, something older than me, something waiting. I reached out to touch it. My fingers sank into the gray like water, and the figure, one figure, rose slightly higher, a shadow within shadow. It paused. Silence followed, thick and complete. No bird, no rustle, no wind, just the hum of the fog breathing. I moved backward. The ground was wet, sucking at my boots. The shape stretched upward, taller now. I felt eyes, or the idea of eyes, fall in the back of my head. I wanted to run, but running meant entering deeper fog. Thick, curling, inhaling fog. I could feel in my lungs now a cold pulse, like it had a heartbeat of its own, a hand, or the suggestion of one, fingers that melted into mist. It reached toward me. I froze. I could hear my own pulse, faster than the slow exhale around me. The shapes drifted closer, almost gentle, almost sad. And then they recoiled, folding in on themselves. The mist swallowed them, twisting until they were nothing but gray again. I knelt on the damp earth, breath shaking, hands pressed into mud. The smell of wet leaves and old decay filled me. The fog thinned slightly. The shapes gone. I told myself I was imagining. It was just mist, just cold air moving over wet ground. But when I looked up, the fog, it pulsed, like lungs filling and emptying, slow, methodical, almost alive. I could feel the heat leaving me, a soft chill crawling under my shirt, and then the whisper, not words, not voices, a sigh, like a memory exhaled. The shapes lingered just beyond sight, a shoulder, a head, a flicker where nothing should be done. I walked forward, careful, every step sucking into the mud. The fog pressed closer, with every move. A faint scent of rain, though the sky was clear, mixed with something coppery. Something I didn't want to name, that I wanted to stay, to see what the mist would show. But dread crawled along my spine, soft, quiet, constant. The The fog swelled again. A deep inhale, filling the space around me. Then an exhale, brushing over my skin like breath from someone sleeping nearby. And I knew without thinking, that it had been watching all along, waiting for me to notice. The shapes never returned, but the air carried them, a presence just beyond touch, a shadow in the gray. I walked until my legs trembled, until my lungs burned with the cold inhale, until the fog thinned into morning light. And even then, I felt it, a pulse beneath the skin, a lingering breath, a quiet, watching exhale. The mist had breathed over me, and I was not alone. The ship rocks gently. Fog presses against the railings, cold and damp. I walk alone down the narrow corridor, the deck groaning beneath each step. Mirrors line the walls, long, narrow, polished, and waiting. At first, I only see myself. The familiar curve of my jaw, the tired lines beneath my eyes. But then something shifts. My reflection lingers longer than I do. It smiles before I do. It breathes differently. I stop. The hum of the engines feels distant now, like a whisper I can barely hear. I lean closer to the glass. The reflection tilts its head. Older, not quite me, not quite alive. I trace my hand along the frame. The wood is cold, damp with sea mist. The reflection does the same, but its fingertips don't meet the glass. They hover, hovering just behind reality. I step back. Shadows gather in the corners of the corridor. The air smells faintly of rust and salt, sharp against the fog outside. The reflection moves. Slowly. It breathes in and I feel in my chest. There's a pause, a silence that presses against my eardrums. I blink. The reflection isn't alone. It shifts, and now there are lines on its face I don't have yet. Its hair is thinner. Its skin pale, almost translucent in the dim light. It watches me with hollow eyes. I want to turn away. I want to run. The deck groans again. I can almost hear whispers, but they vanish when I strain to listen. The mirror fogs slightly from the ship's breath. I reach out, my hand trembling. The reflection does not mirror me anymore. It smiles wider, showing teeth that aren't mine, jagged and faintly yellowed. I step back, and the corridor tilts. The fog presses closer, curling along the walls. Soft footsteps echo, but no one walks beside me. I hear my own heart, but it sounds slow, dragging, like an anchor through water. Another mirror. I glance in. Another version of me sits, hunched, staring back. Eyes too large, skin stretched. I whisper a name, a memory, but it doesn't answer. It tilts its head, watching me with patience, like it's been waiting years. I walk past, but the mirrors multiply. Each one shows me, older, quieter, unblinking. They aren't alive, but they are. Something between. I can feel their gaze crawling over my skin, soft and cold. The hum of the engines fades further. The wind rattles the portholes. I pause, pressed against the polished railing. A breath passes over my shoulder. Not mine. I turn. Nothing. I return to the first mirror. The reflection smiles again. This time it leans forward, and I can see the skin ripple beneath the surface, like water just beneath glass. I can smell the sea and something metallic, sharp and familiar, a memory I can't place. I want to touch it, to reach through, but the closer I move, the further it seems, slipping, stretching, echoing something older than me. I step away. The corridor contracts. Shadows twist at the edges of my vision. Each mirror now holds someone different, each older, each watching. I am alone, but not alone. The fog rises from the deck in thick waves. I press my palms to the cool wall. A faint tapping sound behind me. A reflection I didn't see before, pale and hollow-eyed, raises a hand. I don't. I walk faster. Each step echoes 1,000 whispers. The mirrors stretch the corridor, elongated. I can feel their patience. They're waiting. Time slips between me and them. I try to focus on the engine's hum, the sea's rhythm, but it fades. At the end of the hall, I stop, a single mirror. I see myself as I am. For a moment, relief. Then the eyes shift. Older, tired, not alive. I leave the corridor. The fog curls behind me. Soft, endless. I hear the mirrors, sighing in my absence. I hear the footsteps, trailing, patient. The ship rocks. The night presses close. And in the corner of my mind, I know the mirrors are still watching. The deck was slick with night fog. A pale, trembling light hung over the railings. I leaned against the cold metal, listening. Whispers drifted from below. Soft, curious, almost pleading. They crawled along the hull, under the floorboards, through the ribs of the ship. I couldn't tell if they were words or fragments of memory. Stolen and hollow, they pressed against my chest, light as breath, heavy as lead. The latter groaned when I touched it. Each rung chilled my hands. The voices flickered, faded, shifted. I paused halfway down. Silence, thick, immovable. I could feel it pressing against my ribs. The air smelled of wet wood and rust. Salt lingered, sharp, in my nostrils. And still, the whispers had vanished. I stepped onto the lower deck. The boards were slick, whispering under my feet. But the sound was gone. A shadow stretched along the wall. Too long, too still. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. The ship creaked. Or was it me? Soft, distant knocks echoed through the hull. I wanted to climb back. But something held me, a quiet insistence beneath the silence. The cabin smelled of cold metal and old wood. I traced my fingers along the walls. They hummed faintly, vibrating with nothing. In the corner, something moved. I saw it only with the edge of my eye. A flicker, a shape that wasn't mine. I stopped breathing. The air thickened. It smelled faintly of smoke and wet rope. The darkness held. No whispers returned. Just a weight of stillness, heavy on my shoulders. A soft shuffle, barely there. I froze. The sound passed me, brushing my ankle, fading into nothing. I pressed my hand against the hull. Cold, hard, unyielding. It shivered under my palm, or maybe I imagined it. The silence felt alive. A presence wrapped around me. Careful, patient, waiting. I wanted to run, to climb back to the deck, to the fog, to the open air, but the silence would not let me move. Time stretched, warped. Breath came in shallow bursts. Every heartbeat drummed against the empty walls. Then a faint echo returned. A whisper, single, soft, sibilant, not from the boards, not from the walls, but from inside me. It asked nothing, demanded nothing, just waited. I did not answer. I could not. The fog above thickened. Moonlight fractured on the water. I pressed myself to the cold floor, feeling the hull vibrate with absence. The ship sighed, a shuddering exhale that rattled the beams. The voices stayed below, and I stayed above them, alone, hearing nothing. The air smelled of salt, thick and heavy, clinging to my skin. The deck was wet beneath my bare feet, though I didn't remember rain. A pale light seeped through the fog, stretching long fingers across the wood. I noticed the sun. It rose quickly, and just as quickly it fell again. I blinked. The horizon shifted, but the sea remained still, unnaturally still. Time felt soft, like it was bending around me, folding on itself. A rope groaned above. The ship moaned in response, though there was no wind. I pressed my hand to the railing. It was cold, but not solid, like the air had weight. Minutes passed, though they didn't. I tried to count, but numbers dissolved in the fog. Each step I took left no echo, yet my own heartbeat sounded like a drum in an empty hall. The compass swung wildly, useless. Stars peeked out, pale and trembling. I could see them vanish, then flare again, faster than breathing. I heard footsteps, soft shuffling, always just behind me, though I never turned. The cabin doors rattled. I whispered to them, though they could not answer. A smell rose, old wood, brine, something burnt that I couldn't name. The horizon blurred. The ship tilted slightly, then straightened, and my stomach rose in protest. Time, it no longer mattered. Minutes and hours spilled into each other, pooling at my feet. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the sun hung at the edge of the world again. I had not moved, but the deck had changed. The ropes were taut where they had been slack, and the sails swayed without wind. I tried to speak. My voice cracked in the heavy air. A whisper, my own, answered back from the shadow of the mast. I leaned against the railing. The wood hummed beneath my palms. It was alive, breathing slowly, watching. Shadows moved without shape. A gull cried, but its body never appeared. The fog pressed closer, curling around my ankles, climbing up my arms. I felt the second stretch like soft rope, twisting and fraying. A memory, or was it the present, slipped through me. I thought of land, of safety, of light. It felt distant, unreachable, like a dream half remembered. The sun fell again, then rose, then fell. I stopped trying to measure it. There was only the rocking, gentle and endless, the hum of the ship beneath my feet, the smell of salt and something else, something waiting. I shivered. The fog thickened. And then, for a moment, silence. I took a breath. It was the only proof I had that I was here. But the ship, it existed beyond proof. It drifted through hours that were not hours, through a time that would not stay. I closed my eyes. The pale light pressed against my lids. And I realized, no matter how long I stayed, no matter how far I walked, I would never reach the edge. Time would drift, and I would drift with it, alone, endless. The air down by the water was always cold, a damp, clinging chill, even in the height of summer. I walked a forgotten stretch of coastline, where the pines grew thick and right up to the rocky shore. I was looking for sea glass, for a bit of quiet. That's when I saw it, a narrow finger of weathered wood, disappearing into the fog. A dock. It wasn't on any of my maps. It felt older than it should. The wood was silvered and smooth, slick with a cold mist. It stretched out, and out, further than any dock had a right to. The gray water lapped softly against the pilings. A hollow, rhythmic sound. I stepped onto the first plank. It groaned under my weight. A low, tired complaint. The fog was thicker here. It swallowed the world behind me. The trees vanished into a wall of pale gray. I was alone, completely alone. The only sound was the water, and my own breathing. I walked for what felt like minutes. My footsteps were too loud in the silence. I looked back. The shore was gone. There was only the dock, stretching back into the fog. And ahead of me, more dock, more fog. A shape began to form in the gloom ahead, a dark, solid mass. As I got closer, it resolved into a ship, an old fishing trawler. Its paint was blistered and faded. The name on the hull was unreadable, worn away by salt and time. It was tied to the dock with a single, thick rope, dark and heavy with water. The wheelhouse windows were black. Empty. I could smell rust. An old wet rope, the scent of the deep ocean. I took a step closer. The fog seemed to pulse. A slow, thick breath. When I looked again, the trawler was gone. The space where it had been was empty, just flat, gray water, and the endless dock. My heart was a dull thud in my chest. I kept walking. The air grew colder. My jacket was no help against this kind of chill. It seeped into my bones. Another shape emerged. A sleek, modern sailboat. White fiberglass. Silent and still, it glided past the dock, not 10 feet away. No one was at the helm. The sails were furled. It moved as if pulled by an invisible string. I could see a coffee mug on the deck, a blue jacket draped over a rail. Then a tendril of fog curled around its stern, and the boat was simply not there, swallowed by the pale nothing. A soft static began to fill the air, not a sound you hear, but a feeling, a prickle on the skin, a pressure in the ears. I wanted to turn back, but which way was back? Both directions looked the same, an infinity of weathered planks. Lost in the mist, I saw more of them then. Shadows in the fog, the outlines of tankers, the hulking forms of freighters. They drifted past in the deep silence. Phantoms on a forgotten sea. None of them made a sound. No engine hum. No wave against the bow. Just a soft, constant lap of water beneath my feet. I stopped walking. There was no point. Ahead of me, the dock continued into eternity. Behind me, my own footsteps had been erased. I sat down. The wood was cold and damp through my jeans. I pulled my knees to my chest, and I watched. A child's wooden dinghy drifted by, paint chipped, one, or missing. A single, small rain boot sat inside. It bobbed once, and faded into the gray. I closed my eyes. I listened to the water, a gentle, rocking whisper. When I opened them, I saw a light, far out in the fog. A single yellow beacon. It wasn't moving. It was just waiting. I knew then this was the last dock, the place where all the lost things come, the ships that never made port, the journeys that never ended. And I had just become one of them. The fog settled around my shoulders. A final, heavy blanket. The static in the air softened into a whisper. I just sat there, waiting for my own ship to come in. The lake was perfectly still that night, a sheet of black glass. My little rowboat floated in the center, a tiny wooden island under a ceiling of cold stars. The air was sharp with the smell of pine and deep, cold water. I remember the silence. It was a heavy thing, a blanket wrapped around the world. I dipped my oars carefully, trying not to break it, trying not to make a sound. Then a low thump. It came from directly below. A single, solid vibration that traveled up through the soles of my boots. A dull echo in the bones of the boat. I froze, my hands gripping the wood of the oars. The silence returned, but it was a different silence now. A waiting one. I held my breath. My heart was a frantic drum in my ears. I stared down at the dark water between my feet. It was opaque, a pool of spilled ink. Then a long, slow, scraping sound. It was wet, like something rough and immense was dragging itself along the underside of the hull. A low, gritty rustle. It went on for what felt like a minute. I could feel the vibration in my teeth. A deep, resonant hum. The boat shifted, just a little. A tilt to the left that was too deliberate to be a wave. There are no waves on a lake this calm. My knuckles were white. I couldn't move. I couldn't even whisper. The scraping stopped. The hum faded. The water was silent again. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it was just a log. A trick of the deep. I let out a shaky breath. A small cloud of mist in the frigid air. And then I saw it. A shadow. Beneath the boat. It wasn't the dark of the water. This was a deeper dark. A solid thing. It uncoiled. Slowly. A patch of black that blotted out the reflected stars far below. It was massive. I could see no shape to it. No beginning or end. Just a spreading stain. Growing larger. Rising. A low groan seeped through the hull. The sound of old wood under a terrible, gentle pressure. The boat creaked. A sad, tired sound. The deck beneath me tilted again. More this time. Water lapped against the side. A soft, wet kiss. The shadow was directly under me now. I could feel its presence. A cold that had nothing to do with the night air. It was the cold of a deep place. A place where light has never been. I closed my eyes. There was nothing else to do. I listened to the slow, wet movements. A language shifting in the deep. A sound like stone grinding against stone, deep under the earth. It was right there. Just a few planks of wood between us. I could smell it now. A scent of wet earth. Of forgotten caves. Of things that sleep for a very, very long time. The boat settled. The pressure eased. The shadow began to sink. Slowly, deliberately, it drifted downward. A cloud of midnight, fading into the abyss. The sounds faded with it. The deep hum receding into a whisper. Then into nothing. I sat there for a long time. The stars slowly turned above. The lake returned to its perfect black mirror. My hands were still locked on the oars, my body trembling with a chill that had settled deep in my core. I finally picked up the oars. My movements were slow, careful. I rowed back to shore. I didn't look back at the water. Not once. I pulled the boat onto the gravel beach. Its hull was clean. No scratches. No mud. Nothing at all. I walked up the path to my cabin. Every few steps I'd stop and listen, hearing only the rustle of pine needles in the wind. But in the back of my mind, the echo of that slow, wet shift, and the certain quiet dread that something down there had only turned over in its sleep. The air was cold, a sterile metallic cold. It seeped through my clothes. settled deep in my bones. I was lying on a floor, hard and smooth. The light above me was a long, narrow tube, flickering, a pale, sickly hum. It pulsed like a dying heartbeat. I pushed myself up. My hands were bare against the floor. A chill shot my arms. The room was small, all gray walls and silence, except for that hum, and the creaking, a low, deep groan that moved through the ship, a long, slow breath in, then out. I wasn't sure how I got here. The last thing I remembered was the fog, thick and wet, clinging to my skin, the salt smell of the sea, then nothing, just this. A single door stood opposite me, no handle, just a smooth metal surface. I walked to it. My footsteps were too loud in the quiet. I pressed my hands against the cool metal, pushed, nothing. I pushed harder. My palms stung with the pressure. The door didn't budge. It was seamless, a part of the wall itself. A knot tightened in my chest, small and hard. I turned. The flickering light cast long, dancing shadows. They twisted along the walls, like fingers reaching. The creaking grew louder, a long, drawn-out moan from the belly of the ship. It sounded like with straining, but the walls were metal, cold and hard. I placed my hand flat against the wall. I could feel it, a faint vibration, a deep, resonant shudder that traveled up my arm. It matched the rhythm of the creaks, in and out like a sleeping giant. Breathing in the dark, I slid down the wall to the floor. The cold bit through my clothes. I was trapped, truly, completely alone. Hours bled together, marked only by the flicker of the light and the ship's steady breath. I found a small panel in the wall. It slid open to reveal a spout. Cool, tasteless water trickled out. Another opened to reveal a bland nutrient bar. The ship was providing for me, keeping me, its guest, its prisoner. I started talking to it, just whispers at first. Why am I here? The only answer was a soft groan from the corridor beyond my door, a shift in the vibration under my feet. I began to recognize its moods. A sharp, sudden creak was a warning, a sign of my own rising panic. A long, low hum was a lullaby, an attempt to soothe. The flickering lights were its way of watching, a slow, blinking eye. I stopped trying to open the door. I stopped pleading for answers. The fight in me just drained away. It left a hollow space, a quiet emptiness. One cycle. As I sat against the wall, I felt the ship turn, a gentle, banking motion. The vibrations in the floor softened, became almost a purr. It was happy. I was staying. I closed my eyes, listened to the sounds of my new home, the hum of the lights, the whisper of the air circulators, the deep, resonant breathing of the ship around me. It was a living thing, and I was inside it, a part of it. I stood up and walked to the center of the room. I looked up at the flickering light. I'm not leaving. I whispered. The light steadied, glowed with a soft, constant pale white. The entire ship fell silent. The creaks, the groans, they just stopped. For a single, perfect moment, there was only peace, a profound, absolute silence. Then a new sound began, a gentle, mechanical click from the door. It slid open, for the first time. It didn't reveal a way out, just a long, dark corridor, beckoning, an invitation to see the rest of my home. I took a slow breath, and I took a step forward.